Hey everyone, I'm Cayna and I play Enhancement Shaman in Method's raiding team. With the success of Banger's Destruction Log guide, I wanted to put together this guide for you based on my written guide from the Method's website to give you guys visual aids to go along with the guide. So let's get right into it. Starting off the guide, I will be showing you guys my artifact weapon. A recommended path for the artifact weapon looks similar like this. This is the best way to rush your new golden trait, Lashing Flames. Once you have obtained our new golden trait Lashing Flames, you're simply going to be working on all the traits to get them 4 out of 4. The order I recommend you to get your 4 out of 4 traits, I will be talking about right now, including talking about relics. So the first thing you have to notice about relics is our best relic by far is Wind Strikes. Wind Strike gives us a huge amount of attack speed whenever we proc a Stormbringer proc. This attack speed is very good in Cleave, since in Cleave you often proc it a lot more. Because of the amount of attack speed, you get a lot more attacks in, which often gives you the chain reaction of proccing Stormbringers. Outside of this, attack speed generates Maelstrom for us, and with Flame Tongue and Hailstorm active, also gives us a lot of damage. This trait is worth 6 item levels on the weapon, not on the relic, on the weapon. If you have for example, a Spiritual Healing one, which is 5 item levels higher, it would be a DPS loss to replace the Wind Strikes. For that reason, I'm still using my 895 Wind Strike relic. I obtained in Thrall of Valor, and a couple of months later I still have not replaced this. The next strongest trait is Gathering of Maelstrom. Please know that this trait is only good because of a 4 set. If you do not have 4 set, this trait is worth nothing to you and should not be aimed for. If you do have 4 sets, this trait is worth 3 item levels on the weapon. These will be your 2 strongest traits. Wind Strikes currently is very difficult to obtain, because none of them drop in Nighthold itself. Which means doing Emerald Nightmare, Thrall of Valor, or Mythic Blast is the only way to obtain these. Some stronger traits that actually do drop a lot is Weapons of the Elements. This increases your Boulder Fist, Flame Tongue and Frostbrand damage. Note that the Flame Tongue and Frostbrand damage is only the on-hit effect, not your auto attacks. Wind Surge increases damage dealt with Wind Fury is also very strong, for obvious reasons, and increases our burst damage with Doom Wind a tiny bit. Some situational relics are Gathering Storm, which only has its use in AoE. On single target this doesn't get used, or barely gets used. On Cleave this gains its value. Even on Cleave though, it does not gain that much compared to Wind Strikes. Forced in Lava is also a very situational relic, only when used with Hot Hand and our legendary Uncanize together with Lashing Flames, this becomes worthwhile. Even with how strong Lava is with this build, it is not stronger than Wind Strikes, for the sole reason that it only increases Lava damage by 3 or 4%. It is a very minor increase compared to some other classes, which their Villa trait gives them like 7%. This means when you're not using the build, this trait is worth nothing. It is worth probably less than Gathering of Maelstrom. If you do use this build, this trait would be around the same value for me as Gathering of the Maelstrom. Some of the more useless traits are Spirit of the Maelstrom, which is we gain Maelstrom when we're in Ghostful form, Elemental Healing, and Spiritual Healing, because they increase our healing and doesn't increase our DPS. So with this you kinda know what relics to aim for, what path you should take, and what you should be looking out for. Alright, so the next topic is Legendaries. Before we start, Enhancement has a lot of use for almost every single Legendary. If you want to be the best Enhancement, you're gonna need a lot of Legendaries. Starting off the Legendary list, I will be talking about Uncertain Reminder. This legendary increases our blood loss duration by 75%. It's a very strong legendary, good on single target, has its uses on Cleave as well, has its uses on progress as well. If you have a very hard specific phase that you need to push through quickly, quick example being pre-nerf Star Augur phase 3, this would be amazing for you. Very nice to have. Next one is Pridus. Very nice legendary actually. I wish I had it on my Enhancement Shaman. I have been too lucky to actually not get it when it was in a shitty state. It still has very decent offensive value, still decent DPS increase, got a lot of stats. Definitely not the best for DPS. However, the defensive effect is actually really, really nice. Enhancement Shaman's one of the biggest weaknesses, at least, is our defensives. We don't have any passive damage reduction. Very vulnerable to consistent high burst damage taken. Example being Empowered Eyes of Gul'dan, Empowered Hellfire on Gul'dan, where you'll take 3 big hits back to back. We don't have like Pursuits to sustain every single hit, so Pridus takes away one of those things. On a fight like Star Augur, if you're just progressing it, I highly recommend you use this, since most of the damage in that fight is burst damage, and Pridus is amazing against that. Nice legendary, definitely big use. Third up, there is Amelon's Charged Core. This is a must-have for cleave and AoE situations. The effect is insane, the amount of stats it gives is insane. Even on single target, this is not terrible. Definitely not the best, but it's not terrible, since of the amount of stats it gives. Very good legendary to get it, and very good legendary to pick up. Next up, Enhanced Absolute Justice. With the 7.2 changes, this has actually become really strong. Especially when combined with the next legendary I'll talk about. Together with the new trades, Lashing Flames and the Tenant Hot Hands, this can do some serious damage. Very nice to pick up right now. Very good for single targets. Only downside to it is that it requires you to take Hailstorm over Ancestral Swiftness. But on single target, that will be worthwhile right now. Next up is Eye of Twisting Nether, which is one of the nicest legendaries to get. It's a good stat stick. Getting a higher item level. Haze Mastery Ring is very difficult at the moment because none drop in Nighthold. It's a great legendary to get. If you only have this legendary, bear in mind that if you just have this one, you do not use Hailstorm. However, if you combine this one together with Enkenize, you will be using Hailstorm. It's extremely strong for single target that way. Again, just great legendary to get. Next up is the Roots of Shaldrasal. This is a big stat stick. It is very good for Enhancement Shaman. The healing effect is also very nice. Huge stats, I don't know, I can't say much more about it. It is just a very nice legendary to get. It won't be your complete best in slot, but like putting this one together with Pridus, for example, still gives you very good single target damage, as well as giving you a huge amount of defensive value. Definitely a nice one to get. Next up is Storm Tempest, which is possibly one of the weaker ones. It doesn't feel at home on single targets. It doesn't feel at home at 2 targets. It's weaker than the chest on 3 targets. It's getting kinda out of hand to manage at 4+ targets. It feels weird. It doesn't really feel like it has its place. The stats on it aren't very good either. It's definitely one of the weaker legendaries right now, but it can still be used. Next up is Spiritual Journey. The legendary feat are possibly worse than Storm Tempest. The only fight I've really found a use on this, or a possible use, is phase 1 Alessander, because when you have to run for the rings, you can at least be Ghost Wolf and get the cooldown off. However, even there, it's not better than like running a single target setup of legendaries. It's very good in Mythic Plus, it has its use during world questing, but in actual raid scenarios, it's very difficult to have its place. Next up is Seven's Secret, which is either your best slot or your worst thing to ever get. The stats on it are really bad. It gives a lot of crit, which is not what we want. However, when there is if there's gonna be a fight where there's a big ad that is stunnable or interruptible, spawns around every 1 minute, and has to die in like 10 to 15 seconds, this legendary is insane. But that fight has never been made yet for us, so we can't use it, which is unlucky. Last one being Kil'jaeden's Burning Wish, which is a fine trinket. It's a strong legendary, it gives a lot of damage, but it takes up a trinket slot. And trinket slots are pretty valuable for Enhancement Shaman. Again, it has its place. The use is fire damage, but it does not get amplified by our mastery, which is kind of a bummer. It's fine, but it's not best in slot. So, some combinations you can make. The best defensive set of combinations, which honestly in progress you will be using a lot. Often in progress it's about going through the fight and not dying, more than pushing boss 10 seconds faster. So running Pridus and the Roots is actually a very strong progression setup. Having these is very nice, you'll be a lot more survivable. If you do end coming to a fight where enrage is a problem, or phase 1 damage is a problem, you can start swapping out by taking Uncertain Reminder, or just running Anconize Absolute Justice with Eye of Twisting Nether. For pure single target damage, Anconize Absolute Justice and Eye of Twisting Nether is right now the best combination. Obviously you want to run Hailstorm with this, gives a lot of single target damage. On 2 targets this also is probably still the best setup. But when you go to Cleave and AoE on 3 targets, you start swapping them out. Taking Ambulance Charged Core is very, very strong and very much needed. This legendary is insane when it goes down to 3+ target Cleave and high amounts of AoE. Together with this legendary, you can run a lot. Running Eye of Twisting Nether is very good without Hailstorm. It's a good stat stick, gives the stats you need. You can also run Uncertain Reminder with this. I find like Hunteress, you can have several amount of blood sets more, where you will have the Bloodlust effect, as long as you tank them on the boss, which will give you a lot of single target damage. You can run Pridus with this for the stats, and the defensive shield if there's a lot of burst. For example, this is something I would have run on early cooldown kills, Mythic for example. Running Chest with the Roots of Shadow Sail is also really nice. Probably gonna give you the best amount of AoE damage, since the Roots themselves also give a lot of agility. So for AoE you have a lot of options. You can look at what specific off pieces you have, what off pieces are high item level, and try to go for high item level sets, because on AoE often item level matters a lot more. This is kinda how the legendary system works for enhancement. It can be very confusing. I'd recommend you check out Lexi's simulation craft guide and sim your character to see what could possibly be your best single target, your best cleave, or your best AoE setup, while keeping in mind that defensive values are really, really good. Alrighty, so next up will be our racial and our stats. So starting off with stats, I'll be going over the stats and what to do and how they interact and what percentages you want, etc. Starting with critical strike, this is our worst stat. Crit doesn't really interact with our spec at all. It doesn't give us anything. This might get a little bit of value in the new Tomb of Sagaris tier set. However, currently in Nighthold, this has no value. You want to obtain as little of it as possible. It's slightly ahead on the damage output of Versatility. However, Versatility also has its damage reduction component, which I value a lot higher in progress. Next up is Haste. Haste has gotten a lot of value this tier because of a 4 set. All Mastery and Haste are about are generating Stormbringer procs. And right now with our 4 set, the best way to proc Stormbringer procs on single target and 2 target is by using Lava Lash. In order to use Lava Lash, you don't really need Mastery, and if you have more Haste, you get more Boulder Fists, and when you have more Boulder Fists, you get more Lava Lashes. Pretty much right now, on pure single target, when your main generator of Stormbringer is the 4 set, you kind of want between, in my opinion, 32 to 35% haste. This is Nighthold based, this is not pure single target based. If you want to go pure single targets, you probably want to get as much haste as possible. However, I prefer to just go from an entire tier, look at an entire tier, and right now well performing for single target, and for on every single fight in Nighthold, having between 32 and 36% haste is very nice. When you go to Cleave, so when you go to Mass AoE, haste kind of loses its value. When Lava Lash is not the main generator for your Stormbringer procs and Mastery is, Mastery obviously gains its value in AoE and Cleave. Mastery pretty much just increases our chance to trigger Stormbringer and Wind Fury on auto attacks and on main hand abilities, which means Mastery does not influence Lava Lash It doesn't do anything for Lava Lash outside of increasing its damage. Lava Lash is an offhand ability. It can't trigger Stormbringer procs without the force set. So the only things that can actually trigger Stormbringer procs are Wind Fury, main hand attacks, Crash Lightning, etc. Also increases the Fire Fascination damage, which obviously is really nice on Cleave and AoE, because it increases Crash Lightning damage. Mastery, there's no really cap for it. You just want to have as much as possible, while not losing too much haste and too much idle level. Obviously on Cleave and AoE this is really good, because Crash will be your main generator on Cleave. Next up there's Versatility, which I feel you higher than Crit. It's slightly behind Crit on pure damage. However, it is better than Crit for progress because it has its defensive value. Pretty much TLDR of Enhancement Shaman stats: avoid Crit, avoid Versatility, single target get a lot of haste, on AoE and Cleave get more mastery than haste, is the easiest way to put it. Quickly for trinkets, Conversions also makes haste quite a bit better, since you have more Feral Spirits. Feral Spirits benefit nicely from haste, and having either something like a Bloodthirsty to give it a high uptime, big haste bonus is very nice. Having trinkets that have a low uptime and a big amount of haste often are worse than having higher uptime, smaller amount of haste. Having a haste stat stick is also very nice if you are very low on haste on specific gear sets. If, for example, you are using the chest and the helm, you might have an awful lot less haste than I do, which means swapping in a haste stat stick might be really good. If you have your agreements with me, or your disagreements, or you're running like 40+% haste, you're more than welcome to tell me how it worked out for you, why you like it. I'm very opening for discussions for this. However, for overall Nighthold, I do think this is a good amount of stats to have. Alright, so the next part I will be talking about is some of the smaller things that are to do with Shaman. Mostly add-ons and small little tips. So going over add-ons that I recommend you get is Big Wigs and Weak Auras. Other versions of these add-ons are like Deadly Boss Mods or Tell Me When, that I know a lot more unexperienced users use. Big Wigs because timers are extremely important for Enhancement Shaman. This is where you will be playing your spec around. And Weak Auras or Tell Me When because you want to make sure that you can look in the middle of your screen instead of having to look at your buffs at the top of here, losing focus of the fight, and standing and stuff. Before, however, I will show you around on my Weak Auras and my Big Wigs and why I find it so important. I will be showing you guys some quick macros first that I personally use a lot. I use a click extra action button macro. If you have cooldown the fight, the extra action button, I just use a macro for it. You can keybind it, you can click it. I prefer the macro. There's no real reason not to. Either macro it or keybind it, it helps. It's minor. I have a Bloodlust macro. This macro does nothing else than use the not so fixed Bloodlust abuse with the helm. Currently you can equip the helm. You can press Bloodlust with the Gear Swap macro. You can see it here. The only thing you have to change in this is equip set. Mine called is pure single target, which is this set. If you want it to work for you, you just have to put in the actual set of the name. So if I want to use the chest, for example, this set, I will have to change it around. If I want to use pure single target set, it will be this. You just simply equip the set with the helm. Make sure to have it update, because if someone ninja pulls, you're kinda screwed. You use this, you click it, and boom, you gear swap. You just use this like 1 second beforehand. Right now you can't see it because I'm sated, but you will maintain the entire Bloodlust duration of like, 1 minute something. You pretty much just get 3 legendary effects. The next thing will be a wind shear macro. This will be to main focus the main target unless you have a mouse over. So if I mouse over on this target and a wind shear, I will interrupt that one. Main reason is if I have to target this and to interrupt it, I will stop attacking, I can't do my rotation. It's a minor DPS loss, that's why I like it. If you're not focusing anything with your hands and you just interrupt, it will interrupt the main target. Unlike some other macros that will just not allow you to do it. This is what I prefer. I like it. So going over my weak orders right now. I mostly use dynamic groups. This is how my weak orders will look like. This will be the boss, this will be my trinkets, and this is all my small dynamic groups that I have. Dynamic groups I really like because I kind of use it for every single spec. It's always just going to be in the same place. I personally really like this. I have this for every single spec. You can see it like this. It's what I prefer. All of them are downloadable. You're more than welcome to play around with it and see what you like. I find this really important just because instead of having to look here, I can look in the middle of my screen. I can see everything that's happening that I need to know that is happening here. My big weak timers are here. My health bar is here. My abilities are here. Cost bars are here. Instead of having to look all around of what is happening. Like my timers could be here, my buffs could be here, etc. Instead of having to use everything on the screen, I can use this. So some quick small tips that I find useful for Enhancement Shaman has to do a lot with timings. Instead of being the Enhancement Shaman that just randomly uses his cooldowns and randomly presses buttons to do his rotation, you want to look at timers. If the small eyes of Gul'dan are spawning soon, the last thing that you want to do when they spawn is be in this situation you see right now, where I have to Boulder Fist, Fling Tongue, and then Frostbrand, and then by the time the eyes are dead. What you want to do is have the eyes spawn when all your buffs are up. So the eyes spawn, you can crash, you can pop your Doom Winds, you can pop your Wolves, you can make sure your Wolves are already pre-popped, and you can just Storm Strike the targets, instead of having to maintain your buffs. Making sure you have your timer somewhere you can look very easily and keep a good eye on is just important for your damage. You don't want to be the unprepared shaman, you want to be the prepared shaman. Make sure you look at your timers. If the eyes are about 2 seconds of spawning, 3 seconds of spawning, apply your buffs fresh. When they spawn, you can go full ham on your damaging abilities in the high damage parts. Same counts for your cooldown. Want to make sure your wolves are used as early as possible to not waste a use, but you don't want to waste the damage. So if the eyes are alive for 7 seconds, you can pop your wolves 8 seconds before the eyes, make sure they already immediately have all the wolves running, then maintain your buffs. The eyes will spawn, you're all good to go. The eyes spawn, put your buffs, put your Doom Winds out with your Stormbringer procs you generate from AoEing, and you get the max amount of damage. Same with pure single target and powered eyes spawning. Make sure you have your buffs out before, make sure you have your wolves out before. If you're using Doom Winds, the eyes are alive for like 6 seconds. Preferably, obviously, you would want to use Doom Winds if you read my guide together with a Stormbringer proc. Which you can see here, I have the Wind Strike timer here. You want to use it together with Wind Strikes. I know that I have 2 extra seconds to generate the Wind Strike before I actually use the Doom Winds. Instead of just the ice spawns, I instantly use Doom Winds and I might not get a might not get it together with the Wind Strike proc, with the Wind Strike timer. So looking at the timings, knowing how long ads are alive, knowing the fight is a very important thing about being a good shaman, and making sure that everything goes perfect so you can damage the important ads and you can damage as much during the ads as possible instead of having to maintain your buffs and your debuffs at that point. These are kind of the tips that I can bring to a newer shaman. If you are a more experienced shaman, if you have your own macros, you have your own weak orders you really like, and you feel like sharing them, make sure to post it in below, guys. If you have some tips for newer shamans or for the newer shamans as well, make sure to type them in if you think there's something you know. Make sure to share it, guys, in the comments below. I will be reading it and I will be commenting on it as well. Alright, so the next part of the guide will be a quick overlook at the Enhancement Shaman rotation. The Enhancement Shaman rotation is pretty simple. The only hard part is that you have to keep maintaining, you have to keep an eye on the timers. Making sure that you're prepared for the parts where you can actually do most of your damage is very important. I think I talked a little bit about this already with like the tips and tricks about like knowing your timer and preparing your buff up times. This is a really big part, and on pure single target it kind of happens less and the class is relatively simple and RNG to play. But on Cleave and AoE it's kind of where like the more difficult part comes in. So for pure single target, you can either run the talents that you see on the screen right now. You can take Feral Lunge, you can take Windrush Totem, doesn't really matter. But these talents are set up if you have the Nighthold 4 set. If you don't have the Nighthold 4 set, you're more likely to run something like this. Without any sets, if you have the 2 set, you run something like this. but I'm gonna assume most of you guys have the Nighthawk 4 set. The only time that this changes, that you're gonna be running something else, is if you have the Anchonized Absolute Justice, and if you have the new trait, Lessing Flames. This will make Lava Lash a very big priority of your gameplay. In this case, again, I'm kind of gonna assume the gameplay doesn't change too much outside of you running Hot Hand and you running Hailstorm. It's a little bit more complicated gameplay. It's faster paced since you always have a GCD to use, and you have to maintain an extra buff as in Frostbrand to maintain Hailstorm. Plus, you have to keep in reaction to your Hot Hand procs. So the enhancement single target rotation, again, is relatively simple. Just going to use our food or flasks, make sure you're prepared for the fight. Then we're going to get our pool going. We don't really precast anything as enhancement. Here you go. You go in, get behind the target, apply your buffs, because you want to use the Hot Hand proc. Summon the wolves out. Even on single target, you want to make sure that you use your Crash Lightning. You can see mine here. You can see the big tree. This is my trait Alpha Wolf. You get the proc. Fling Tongue. Try not to have your overhands overcap. Maintain your buffs. Again, you can see my Wind Strike timer, which I use to time my Doom Winds. And now you can just see, like, for example, you can see in my UI that my Frostbrand and Hailstone turn red. I know I have to reapply it. You don't overcap Storm Strike procs. Always try and use your first Storm Strike proc since it's the most empowered. And on the single target, it's all about just maintaining the timers, maintaining your resources, spending your resources, getting back up there, and just fishing for the Stormbringer procs. When you're running Ankenize, I do prioritize the Hot Hand proc since it is the bigger hitting spell. You can see the damage breakdown. Lava Lash right now is number 1. Of course, Storm Strike has 2 components, as you can see. That's main hand and off hand. The Storm Strike still does do a bit more damage, but depending on your Hot Hand procs, this can change a awful lot. Wolves are back up. We will use our Crash once again. We get a proc instantly with it. We have to maintain our buffs as well now. You can see that right now there's a lot of buffs to maintain, and you can't really use your your Storm Strike procs effectively. On Cleave, nothing really much changes. The only thing that really changes on big Cleave is that you're going to be running different talents. Going over that right now, I'll be going that over right now. Again, single target is really simplistic. You just keep your resources. That's about it. On Cleave, Ankenize becomes weaker since instead of using Lava Lash a lot, you'll be using Crash a lot. So on Cleave, you're gonna be running different Legendaries. For example, on Cleave, you will be running the Chest, which is very strong. A personal favorite combination of mine is Chest and Ring. You can run Chest and Legs as well. You can take a different set for that. However, I lose quite a bit of haste. I do gain quite a lot of mastery as well. But this is my preferred set. You can see I'm like 36,000. And if I use the legs, I'm at 37,000. This is probably, like, if I'm running like Gul'dan, this is what I would be using. If I'm running Gul'dan, because there's quite a bit of AoE and the healing effect is pretty nice. I don't really have a very strong offering. Even though this one is decent, I would prefer like the Gul'dan ring, because it's high art level. And more stats for AoE as well. But this is a pretty good stat. Then for Cleave, you're always running Boulder Fist. And you want to run a Sense of Swiftness, because you don't have any reason to really run Hailstorm. So this will be your best setup for Cleave. Pool is pretty much going to be the same. Pre-pot, Boulder Fist. This time you summon your Wolves. Then you Flame Tongue. And you go into your normal rotation. The only thing that is right now extra to the spec is that you have to maintain Crash Lightning. In this case, I also maintain Legendary Chest. I gave it a little bit of a different color. And you just keep reacting to procs. On 3 targets, I would use Crash over Lava Lash. You won't really see me use Lava Lash pretty much at all here. I have enough to put in my GCDs elsewhere. 3 targeting Crash is more effective. Always make sure you're behind the target to not miss. And try and face yourself so your Cleave hits as many targets as possible. Right there you can see that I was doing I did 1 small Lava Lash because I didn't have any other GCDs to fill in. Gonna Boulder Fist, gonna do whatever in my meantime. And keep fishing for those procs. Obviously the damage right now is way too high because they're low level dummies. On Cleave, you also will have Lashing Flames, which will be useful for you. You'll be stacking it a lot more. This will go up very high. This will be like our Lava-less interaction into Cleave kinda right now. Here we have some more procs. We apply Boulder Fist. Buffs are running out, which is fine because we can summon Wolf soon as well. And this is pretty much all you do. You keep crushing, you keep maintaining your buffs. Keep fishing for those Stormbringer procs, there you go. Use the Doom Winds together with the Wind Strikes, keep fishing for more. And a buff fall up there, which isn't very good. And this is pretty much just the rotation. Obviously, on fights like Gul'dan, you'll have both cleave and single target. Even if there is quite a bit of cleave, I would still not recommend to run Anconize. But simply because then you also have to take the ring, and then you have to take Hailstorm, and you have to run Hot Hand, and it's just gonna go at the cost of your AoE. If you're running Sundering is extremely easy, unlike Gul'dan for example. If you are running Sundering, just make sure that you save it for the big AoE points. On Gul'dan it's pretty decent because you can use it on every single eye spawn. Small or big, it still does some decent burst damage, but it doesn't really change much. This is pretty much the easy dummy hitting. And now I'll show you guys some recordings. So, the last part I will quickly talk about Nighthold and, in my opinion, what you can do the best for Nighthold as Enhancement Shaman. As I said, we are not #1 DPS anymore, so don't play to it either. If you're gonna play Enhancement, make sure you are playing to the strength of the spec, which is mostly target swapping and killing ads. When Corrosive spawns ads, and there are like 2 of them, run to them, crash, and go ham on one of them. Stun them, interrupt them, etc. On Botanist, when he spawns the orbs, swap to it quickly. Kill the first orb quickly, kill the plants that spawn off it, or if there's plants close by, just run to them with Ghost Wolf and kill them. Make sure that you're as useful as possible in your raid. On Gul'dan, see for cooldowns for Empowered Eyes, etc. Your overall damage isn't gonna be that high. Yeah, you can make it relatively easy, maybe to like the top 6 maybe, but just keep in mind that you're not the strongest spec in the game, and you have amazing target swap, so play to it. On some fights though, you can do a lot of damage, like counters for example. If you tank the blobs under the boss, you can do a serious amount of damage to the boss at least. Make sure that you utilize that. Don't go AoE horror mode, don't like save all your CDs. Make sure you're as effective as possible. Pop that single target on cleave situations, and make sure that you target swap to every single ad possible. Make sure that you look at your raid very well and utilize Windrush Totem. This is one of the biggest things that most shamans do wrong, is they don't utilize Windrush Totem very well for the raid. Windrush Totem can give you a good single target, or a raid-wide DPS increase if used correctly. Gul'dan is a very easy example of that, where Windrush Totem often is amazing, and even I can utilize it better there. So make sure that you know the fight well, push your single target damage, especially with cleave, and swap well to the targets. Well guys, this was my enhancement guide. I hope you found it easy to follow and informative. If you did, make sure to hit that like. If you got any bonus questions, come hang out in my stream. You can find links both on screen and below. What guides would you like to see next? Make sure to leave a comment. Thanks very much for watching guys.